I never expected the last words I'd hear from my daughter-in-law would be, "It's almost over." My hands trembled slightly as I sat on the hospital bed, the sterile smell of antiseptic heavy in the air. I had just come out of surgery, still groggy, trying to piece together what was happening. Samantha stood beside me, her smile too bright, too forced as she looked down at me. She wasn't here to comfort me. She was here for something else, something I hadn't yet realized. It wasn't the care I had hoped for. It was the final confirmation that I was no longer important to her. "It's almost over," she repeated, her words like ice. I blinked slowly, confused by what she meant. Over? What was over? The surgery? My life? I didn't have the strength to question it. I just lay back against the pillows, trying to shake the fog in my head, trying to ignore the sinking feeling that something was terribly wrong. It wasn't the first time I'd felt out of place in my own family, but it was the first time I had been made to feel so insignificant, even in a hospital bed, where my life was literally hanging in the balance. As she turned to leave the room, her face unchanged, I realized something. Something I had never let myself believe. Samantha had been plotting. I was no longer part of her plans. I wasn't just an inconvenience. I was someone to be discarded, and she had been waiting for this moment for a long time. I closed my eyes, pretending to drift back to sleep, but my mind was racing. I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Not when I knew what was at stake. I knew Samantha thought she could control everything, but she hadn't counted on me. I may have been old, but I wasn't weak. I wasn't going to let her win. Not without a fight. I had spent years taking care of everyone else, making sacrifices, doing whatever I could to keep the family together. And this is how they repaid me. By standing by while Samantha plotted to take everything I had left? No, it wasn't going to happen. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me, not without facing the consequences of her actions. The fog was clearing now. The moment she'd spoken those words, I knew it was time to take back control. It wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The next few days after Samantha's chilling words felt like a blur. The dull ache from the surgery never fully left, but it was the weight of the silence that pressed hardest on my chest. Every morning I woke up in that sterile hospital room, each beep of the machines reminding me that I was still alive, but barely living. Samantha came and went, her visits short, perfunctory, like she had somewhere else to be, something more important. Every time she walked in, I could feel her eyes scanning me, looking for signs of weakness, of vulnerability. She didn't see it, though. What she didn't know was that I wasn't going to make this easy for her. She might have thought I was old, frail, and helpless. She might have thought I was just a nuisance that could be disposed of quietly. But I was far from finished. I knew what she had been planning. How she had been poisoning Daniel's mind, turning him against me, plotting behind my back to take everything from me. And what bothered me the most was that I had allowed it to happen for so long. I had let them believe I was too old to notice, too tired to care. But they were wrong. I had seen the signs, I had noticed the little things. The way Samantha would get defensive whenever I asked about my share of the family estate. The way she'd brushed me off when I mentioned spending more time with Daniel. It wasn't just the coldness she showed me. It was her manipulation. The quiet way she had made herself the center of our family. She had worked her way into Daniel's life, into his heart, and now she was trying to push me out. But I wasn't going to let her. As the days passed, I began to make my plans. I knew I needed to be careful, subtle. Samantha wasn't stupid. She would notice if I made any sudden moves. But I had time. The one thing I had in abundance was time. Time to observe, time to listen, and most importantly, time to figure out what to do next. I spent my days in the hospital bed, pretending to rest, but in reality, I was plotting my next steps. Kept thinking about the things Samantha had said in her careless moments, how she'd hinted that my presence was an inconvenience, how she'd mentioned, almost casually, that it would be easier for everyone if I just moved out. But I wasn't going anywhere. This house, this family, was mine as much as it was anyone else's. Daniel and Samantha thought they had everything under control, that they could walk all over me. They didn't know the woman they were dealing with. I had raised Daniel, loved him with all my heart, and now he was choosing her over me. But that didn't mean I had to let them win. As the week went on, I made quiet phone calls from the hospital, arranging things without their knowledge. I reached out to a few trusted people, people who had been loyal to me over the years. I began making the changes I needed slowly, carefully, ensuring that Samantha wouldn't see it coming. I had learned long ago that you don't confront a snake head-on. You let it think it's winning, and then you strike when it least expects it. That was exactly what I was going to do. Every move I made was calculated, every word I said measured. I knew Samantha was watching me, waiting for me to show signs of weakness, but she would never see it. I wasn't weak. I was stronger than she could ever imagine. As the days passed, I could feel the tension building. Samantha didn't know it yet, but she had already lost. The pieces were in motion and I was ready. The next time she came to visit, I would be ready for her. I would show her just how wrong she was about me. I wasn't going anywhere. Not now, not ever. As the days passed, I could feel the tension in the air, thick and suffocating. Samantha's visits were becoming even more infrequent. I had expected her to come, to check on me, to feign some form of compassion. But all she did was leave me with her words echoing in my mind. It's almost over. At first I didn't fully grasp what she meant, but now I understood. It wasn't just the surgery she was talking about. She was speaking about me. She was speaking about how she thought she had already won, how she thought I was a broken old woman, with no fight left in me. I had watched her, observed the way she moved in and out of my life, taking control of everything she could. From the way she'd rearranged things in my own home to how she managed to convince Daniel that it was for the best, that I was a burden. The first few days after the surgery were blurry, but then came the clarity. I wasn't going to let her win. Not like this. Not without a fight. I had started the process already. Quietly. Methodically. I wasn't going to allow Samantha and Daniel to take away everything I had worked for. Everything my late husband and I had built. I would do it silently, without them realizing what was happening until it was too late. I made a phone call to my lawyer. I arranged for documents to be sent, updated some information that needed to be changed, and I carefully planned my next steps. Samantha thought I was out of the game. She thought I was vulnerable. But she didn't know that I had been quietly observing, listening, and waiting. Waiting for the right moment to strike back. My hands shook slightly as I signed the papers that would secure my future. It was a small step, but it was mine. It was my decision, not anyone else's. It felt like the first real control I had taken in months. I was done being pushed aside, done being made to feel like an outsider in my own family. I could hear Samantha's voice in my head again. That smug tone she always had, like she was above it all. I had heard her make subtle comments, trying to plant seeds of doubt in Daniel's mind. He had been distant lately, and I knew it was because of her. She had pulled him away from me, convinced him that I was too much of a hassle, that I was a burden. But I wasn't about to let her have him or anything else. I had worked too hard for too long to just let her take everything. I wasn't some fragile old woman who could be easily discarded. Samantha had underestimated me. I knew it now, and I would make sure she paid the price for it. Every day I spent in that hospital, every moment I pretended to rest, I was planning. There were so many things I could do, so many ways I could turn the situation around. But I had to be patient. I had to be careful. I had learned from years of experience that you don't reveal your cards too soon. You let them think they're winning. Let them believe that they've already beaten you. And when they least expect it, you turn the game around. I could see it now, Daniel and Samantha, so sure that they had me cornered, so confident that they had already secured everything. They didn't know what was coming. They didn't know that I had already begun to take back what was mine. I wasn't ready to confront them yet. Not directly. But I had already begun to take control of my own fate. I could feel the power shifting ever so slightly. I had been patient, but now I was ready. The next time Samantha came to visit, it wouldn't be the same. She wouldn't see the frail woman she thought she was dealing with. No, she would see a woman who had been pushed too far. A woman who was finally standing up for herself. And when the time came when I was ready to face her, she would know exactly who she was dealing with. I wasn't broken. I was stronger than she thought. The days after the hospital felt like a strange, surreal blur. I was still recovering, but in the back of my mind I was plotting. Samantha didn't know it yet, but I had already begun to turn the tables. She thought she had me cornered, that I was just a fragile old woman waiting for the inevitable. But I wasn't waiting. I was preparing. Every day in that hospital bed, every moment I pretended to rest, I was laying the groundwork for my comeback. It wasn't just about what I was going to do, it was about how I would do it. The first time Samantha came back to visit after my surgery, she was all smiles, too many smiles. She walked into my room with that fake warmth, the same warmth that had been there when I was still part of her plans. "How are you feeling, Margaret?" she asked in that tone, like she was genuinely concerned. I didn't say anything at first. I didn't need to. I had nothing to prove to her. She was waiting for me to break, waiting for me to show any signs of weakness. I just looked at her, not with anger, not with fear, but with a calmness that I could tell unsettled her. She shifted her weight from one foot to the other, visibly uncomfortable under my gaze. I could see it now, she was afraid. She didn't know what I had planned, and that fear was exactly what I needed. I smiled faintly, letting the silence stretch just long enough to make her nervous. "I'm fine," I said finally, my voice steady, controlled. Samantha nodded, but her eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite place. She wanted to believe I was a broken woman, but deep down she knew that I wasn't. And that thought unsettled her. After a few minutes of small talk, she left as quickly as she had come. I could hear the sound of her heels clicking against the hospital floor as she walked away, but I didn't feel the usual pang of sorrow or loneliness. Instead, there was a quiet satisfaction that settled over me. I was still in control. Samantha thought she had everything figured out. She thought I was old, tired, and helpless. But what she didn't realize was that I had been watching her, learning from her every move. I wasn't the weak, frail woman she had hoped I would be. I was strong, and I was going to prove it. Later that evening, I called Daniel. His voice was distant as it had been for weeks, but I could hear the concern in his tone. "How are you doing, Mom?" he asked, his words softer than usual. It was a small thing, but it was enough to make me realize that he hadn't completely fallen under Samantha's spell. "Not yet. I'm fine, Daniel. Just taking things one day at a time," I said. I knew he wanted to say more, to ask about everything that had been happening, but I wasn't ready to talk about it. "Not yet. I'll be home soon, okay? I'll be by to check on you." I could hear the hesitation in his voice, the unease that had crept into his mind. It was subtle, but it was there. Samantha's influence on him wasn't as complete as she thought. I had to hold on to that. I had to believe that somewhere inside him, there was still a part of my son, the boy who had once loved me unconditionally. The next few days were quiet, but that silence worked in my favor. I continued to rest, continued to make my plans without drawing any attention to myself. Samantha came by a few more times, each visit more strained than the last. I could see the cracks in her composure, the way she had to force the kindness, the false concern. It didn't take much to see through her act. And each time she left, I felt more and more certain of what I needed to do. The moment would come, and when it did, I would be ready. I was no longer the woman who would quietly fade into the background. I was going to fight for what was mine. I didn't care how much Samantha tried to push me aside. She had underestimated me, and that was a mistake she would regret. I could feel it now, a fire burning inside me, a resolve that I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't going to just let this happen, not without a fight. Days went by, and the tension in the air seemed to grow thicker with each passing moment. Samantha continued her visits, but they were increasingly strained. Each time she stepped into the room, I could feel the weight of her gaze, like she was searching for something. Perhaps a sign of weakness, perhaps a crack in my resolve. But she found nothing. My days were filled with quiet planning, and with every subtle move I made, I could feel the pieces falling into place. I had begun to see things clearly now, and it was only a matter of time before I would act. It wasn't just about reclaiming what was mine anymore. It was about proving to Samantha that she couldn't control me. She thought she had manipulated me, thought she had cut me off from everything and everyone, but she had made a grave mistake. I wasn't helpless. I wasn't fading into the background. I was still in control. One afternoon, as I lay in my hospital bed, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. Daniel walked in, his face worn with the weight of something unsaid. He was still distant, but there was a glimmer of concern in his eyes that hadn't been there before. He pulled up a chair beside my bed and sat down, his hands gripping the edge of the chair like he was about to make an important confession. "Mom," he started, his voice quieter than usual, "I've been thinking about everything. About what's been going on. My heart skipped a beat. This was it, the moment I had been waiting for. I had worked hard to keep Daniel close, even when it felt like he was slipping away. Now it seemed that my persistence had paid off. I don't know what's been happening with Samantha, he continued, his voice filled with uncertainty. But something feels off. I've been seeing things differently lately. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my chest. I had hoped, prayed even, that my son would see through the illusion that Samantha had carefully woven around him. And now he was finally starting to question it. I just want you to know, Mom, he said, looking me in the eyes, that I'm not completely blind to what's been happening. I know you've been pushed aside, and I'm sorry for that. I could feel a tear slip down my cheek, though I tried to keep it hidden. For the first time in a long while, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in months: hope. It wasn't too late. Daniel was still my son, and I hadn't lost him completely. Not yet. It's not your fault, Daniel, I said softly, my voice steady. But it's time we stop letting her control everything. You and we need to figure this out together. He nodded, though I could see the hesitation in his eyes. Samantha's grip on him had been tight, and it wasn't going to be easy to break it. But we had to try. For both of us. That evening, after Daniel had left, I felt a quiet determination settle over me. I knew what I needed to do now. I had laid the groundwork, and now it was time to take action. Samantha had underestimated me, and she had underestimated the bond between a mother and her son. She had made her move, but now it was my turn. The next time she came to visit, I would be ready. This time I wouldn't let her dictate the terms. I wouldn't be the one silenced. I wasn't going to wait for her to strike first. I had my own plan, and I would execute it without hesitation. The next few days passed slowly, but with each moment, I felt more confident in my resolve. Samantha's visits became more predictable, almost mechanical, as if she was growing tired of playing her game. I knew that I had her on edge, and that was exactly where I wanted her. The element of surprise was on my side. It wasn't just about taking back what was mine. It was about showing Samantha that I was not someone to be taken lightly. I had spent years caring for others, putting everyone else's needs above my own. But now it was time to focus on myself. It was time to reclaim my dignity, my strength, and my place in this family. And when I was ready, when I had everything in place, I would make sure Samantha knew that she had underestimated me. I wasn't going anywhere. Not now. Not ever. It was a few days later when Samantha finally came to see me again. This time there was a noticeable shift in her demeanor. She wasn't as confident, her usual smugness replaced by an underlying nervous energy that I couldn't ignore. She walked into my room, her heels clicking against the floor in the quiet hospital hallway, but this time her eyes weren't as sharp, her posture wasn't as rigid. She had no idea that things had already started to unravel. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, the fake sweetness in her voice like a mask she was struggling to hold in place. I looked at her without saying anything for a moment, letting the silence stretch just long enough for her to feel uncomfortable. I had grown used to the feeling of discomfort when she was around, and now it was my turn to let her feel it. "Better," I said calmly, my voice steady. "Thank you for asking." She gave me a small, forced smile, as if she was expecting me to be weaker, to be more grateful for her presence. But I wasn't, and I wasn't going to pretend anymore. Samantha took a seat at the edge of my bed, crossing her legs and glancing at me as though she was expecting some sort of admission, some sign of vulnerability that she could use against me. I wasn't giving her that satisfaction. She had thought that by isolating me, by cutting me off from Daniel and the rest of the family, she had secured her position. She had been wrong. She didn't know that I had already taken steps to protect myself. "I've been thinking," she started, her voice a little too casual. "Maybe it's time we talk about, well, the future." I felt a flicker of suspicion stir inside me, but I kept my face neutral. "What do you mean?" I asked, playing along, but only just. With everything going on," she said, leaning forward slightly. "Maybe it's time to make some changes. We don't want to cause any more stress, do we?" Her words hung in the air, and I could feel the undertones beneath them. The suggestion that I was somehow the source of the stress, the one who needed to be fixed or moved out of the way. It was exactly what I had been waiting for. This was her way of trying to put the pressure on me, to make me feel like I had no choice but to accept whatever she had planned. But I wasn't going to fall for it. I think you're right, I said calmly. We do need to talk about the future. But I'm not sure it's what you think. Samantha's eyebrows shot up, the confusion on her face momentarily betraying her. She hadn't expected me to turn her words back on her. She hadn't expected me to be ready. What do you mean? She asked, her voice slipping just a little, her calm facade faltering. I leaned back slightly in the bed, giving her a long, steady look. I've already made some decisions about my future, I said, my words slow and deliberate. I'm not going to just sit back and let you and Daniel push me aside anymore. There it was. The first real crack in the foundation she had carefully built. She looked at me, her eyes flicking away for just a moment, like she was trying to process what I was saying. She had underestimated me, and now she was beginning to realize it. Samantha cleared her throat, trying to regain control of the conversation, but I could see the shift in her. She was nervous and it made me feel stronger. I don't know what you're talking about, she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but I could hear the tension in it. I'm just trying to help. No, I said, my voice firm. You're trying to control everything. But it's over. I'm not going to be part of your plan anymore. There was a long pause as Samantha absorbed my words, her face flickering with something. Frustration, maybe fear, but it was there, just beneath the surface. She wasn't in control anymore. I was. She didn't know it yet, but she was losing her grip. She opened her mouth to say something, but I held up my hand, stopping her. You can't manipulate me anymore, Samantha. I'm not the same woman I was when you first came into this family. The words stung, and for the first time in a long time, I could see the vulnerability in her eyes. I had her right where I wanted her. The power had shifted and Samantha knew it. She stood up slowly, her gaze still on me, as if trying to figure out what to do next. But there was nothing left to figure out. She had lost. The tables had turned, and she had no idea how far I was willing to go to reclaim my life. I'll leave you to rest, Samantha said quietly, her voice small, no longer the confident tone it had been when she first arrived. I'll see you later. She turned and walked out of the room, but this time I didn't feel that familiar pang of sadness or defeat. No, this time I felt something else, a quiet satisfaction, a certainty that the next chapter was mine to write. The next day Samantha didn't come to visit and I knew why. She was trying to figure out her next move, trying to regain the control she thought she had lost. But the truth was the game had already changed, and she wasn't prepared for what was coming. I had done what I needed to do. I had played my cards carefully, quietly, and now the power was back in my hands. Samantha had underestimated me. She thought I was weak, but I had shown her I was stronger than she could ever imagine. It was the first time in weeks that I felt a sense of calm wash over me. For so long I had let others dictate my life, let them decide how I would live out my final years. But not anymore. I wasn't just an old woman waiting for the end. I was a mother, a fighter, and I had every right to live my life the way I wanted to. The next time Samantha came to see me, I would be ready for her. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She needed to understand that she couldn't control me, and she couldn't control Daniel either. I wasn't going to allow her to tear apart my family, not when I still had a chance to fight for it. A few hours later Daniel came by and this time he was different. He wasn't distant, he wasn't cold. He walked into the room with a sense of urgency, like he knew something was about to happen, like he had made up his mind. Mom, he started, his voice hesitant. I've been thinking a lot about what you said, and I've been doing some digging. I looked at him and I could see the change in his eyes. The doubt was there. The loyalty to Samantha was starting to fade. I've seen how she's been treating you, he continued, his words coming out slower now, and I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner. I've been blind, but I'm not anymore. My heart swelled with relief. This was the moment I had been waiting for. The moment when my son would finally see the truth. He wasn't lost to me, not yet. He was still my son and I could still reach him. Daniel, I said softly, my voice steady but filled with emotion. I've always loved you. And I've always wanted the best for you. But I can't stand by and watch her destroy everything we've built. We're family and that means something. You have to make a choice. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine, trying to understand the gravity of what I was saying. "I know," he said, his voice quieter now. "And I'm sorry, Mom. I don't know how I let her get so much control over me. But I won't let her take you from me. I won't let her take what's ours." It was a promise, and it meant everything to me. In that moment, I knew that I hadn't lost him. We still had a chance. But we had to act quickly. Samantha wasn't going to back down easily. And she wasn't going to give up without a fight. But neither was I. That evening, as Daniel left to go back to his apartment, I sat in the quiet of my room, thinking about the steps ahead. It wasn't just about protecting my legacy anymore. It wasn't just about making sure Samantha didn't get away with what she had done. It was about showing her that I was no longer a pawn in her game. I was the one holding the pieces now. The next time Samantha walked into my room, she wouldn't have the upper hand. I would be ready. I would take control of this situation, and I would make sure she knew that I wasn't the same woman she had once underestimated. She would see that her plans had failed, and I would make sure of it. I wasn't going to let her manipulate me anymore. I wasn't going to let her tear my family apart. I had made my choice, and I was going to fight for it. The days that followed felt heavy with anticipation. I could sense Samantha's growing unease, the cracks in her composure becoming more apparent with each visit. She was trying to mask it, trying to act as if everything was fine, but I could see through her facade. I could see the nervous glances, the slight hesitation in her voice when she spoke to me. She knew something was changing. She knew I was no longer the weak, passive woman she had counted on. It was only a matter of time before she realized just how much I had already taken back control. Daniel had finally come to his senses, and that made all the difference. I could feel the shift in the family dynamic. He was no longer under Samantha's spell. It wasn't that he had completely turned against her, but he was starting to see her for who she really was. And that made all the difference. Samantha had underestimated him, just as she had underestimated me. She thought she could manipulate him, isolate him from me, but she had failed. The next time she came to visit, I would be ready. I wasn't going to let her control the narrative any longer. It was time to face her. When Samantha walked into my room, her usual cold smile didn't reach her eyes. She sat down at the edge of my bed, her posture stiff, like she was trying to hold on to some semblance of power. But I could see the cracks. I could see that she was faltering. "How are you feeling today?" she asked, her voice strained. It was the same question she had asked me every time she visited, but today there was a shift in it. Today I didn't feel the need to pretend anymore. "I'm feeling better," I said, my voice calm and measured. "But I've been thinking about some things, Samantha." Her eyes flickered just for a moment, and I knew I had her attention. "What kind of things?" she asked, her tone still too sweet, too fake. "I've been thinking about how things have changed," I said, leaning back against the pillows, watching her closely. "About how you've treated me, about how you've treated Daniel." She stiffened, and I could see her trying to maintain control of the conversation, but the cracks were showing. "I've done nothing but try to help," she said quickly, almost defensively. "Try to help." I repeated, my voice steady, almost mocking. "Is that what you think you've been doing? You've been manipulating us both, Samantha. You've been trying to control everything, to push me out of my own family." She recoiled, the shock in her eyes telling me everything I needed to know. She hadn't expected me to confront her like this. She hadn't expected me to call her out. "You can't control me anymore," I said firmly. "And you can't control Daniel either. Not now that he's starting to see the truth." Samantha's face tightened, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of fear in her eyes. She knew I was right. She knew that the power she had held for so long was slipping away. "I'm not going anywhere, Samantha," I continued. "I've spent too many years being pushed aside, being ignored. But not anymore. Not while I still have a voice, not while I still have a say in this family." Her lips trembled, but she didn't say anything. She didn't have to. Her silence spoke volumes. "You thought you could control everything," I said softly, almost to myself. "But you were wrong. This family belongs to all of us, not just you. And if you think you can push me out, you've got another thing coming." There was a long silence between us, the air thick with unspoken words. I could see her trying to come up with something to say, something to regain control, but she had lost. She knew it. I knew it. And deep down I think she realized that she had already lost the battle. She stood up, her movements stiff, as if she were trying to maintain some shred of dignity. But it was over. She knew it and I knew it. As she walked toward the door I spoke one last time. "This isn't over, Samantha. Not by a long shot." She paused just for a moment before stepping out of the room. The door clicked shut behind her, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of peace. I had faced her and I had taken back control. Samantha may have thought she was the one in charge, but I had shown her that I was not someone to be underestimated. This was my family and I would fight for it until the very end. The days that followed felt like a strange calm before the storm. Samantha's visits became more distant, her presence in the room almost mechanical, like she was going through the motions, knowing that the game had shifted. She still tried to act like she was in control, but I could see the cracks in her facade. The way she avoided my eyes, the way her shoulders tensed whenever I spoke, she was unraveling, and it was only a matter of time before she would snap. But I wasn't going to wait for her to make her next move. I had already made mine. The shift in the family dynamic was subtle at first, but it was growing more obvious with each passing day. Daniel was still distant, but there was a new kind of tension in the air. He wasn't fully back to his old self, not yet, but he was starting to question everything: Samantha, her intentions, and what had been happening behind closed doors. It was enough. It was everything. One evening, after the usual routine of visits and small talk, Daniel showed up at my door, his face tight with something he couldn't quite hide. It wasn't the usual brief hello, followed by his usual retreat into the other room. He stayed. "Mom," he began, his voice more serious than I had heard in a long time. "I need to talk to you. About everything." My heart skipped a beat. I could see the weight of what he was about to say in his eyes. It was finally happening. The truth was coming out. "I know I haven't been the best son," he said, his words slow, as if he were choosing them carefully. "I let her control me. Let her control everything. I didn't see it. But I see it now." I felt a rush of relief, but I kept my composure. This wasn't the time for emotional outbursts. This was the moment I had been waiting for. "You're not to blame, Daniel," I said softly but firmly. "Samantha's good at what she does. She knows how to manipulate. But you have to make a choice now. You can't let her do this to you, to us anymore." He nodded, and for the first time in a long while I saw my son, the one who had been lost, the one I had feared I might never get back. "I'm going to fix this," he said, the determination in his voice growing stronger with each word. "I've already started. I'm going to set things right." I wanted to hug him, to hold him tight and never let go, but I knew this wasn't the time for that. He had made a decision and now I had to support him. "We're in this together," I told him, my voice steady and confident. "We'll figure this out. I'm not going anywhere." I could see the resolve in his eyes. He meant it. And I knew deep down that things were going to change. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be battles ahead, there would be obstacles, but for the first time in months I felt hopeful. For the first time in a long time I didn't feel like I was losing. I was gaining. The next few days passed in a blur. Samantha continued her visits, but they were quieter now, as if she could sense the shift in the air. She still tried to control the narrative, tried to make it seem like everything was fine, but I knew better. She didn't have the upper hand anymore. I had the upper hand and she knew it. The day finally came when Daniel told me he had spoken to her. "I told her everything," he said, his voice low but resolute. "I told her I knew what she had been doing. And I told her that it had to stop." I could hear the finality in his voice. He was done. And so was I. The battle wasn't over, but we had made our stand. And this time it wasn't just about me fighting for my place in the family. It was about Daniel, my son, finally fighting for himself. Fighting for the family that Samantha had tried so hard to tear apart. The next time I saw Samantha, I wasn't afraid. I wasn't worried. I knew what I had to do. I wasn't going to let her walk all over me anymore. I wasn't going to let her tear my family apart. I had already fought for what was mine. Now it was her turn to see what would happen when she tried to take it away. She thought she had one. She thought she had control. But the truth was she never had control over me. Not really. And now she was going to learn that. She was going to learn that I wasn't the person she thought I was. She was going to learn that I still had the power to take back what was rightfully mine.